Hello, everyone. Welcome to Pink Hibiscus Live. Tonight, we are going to be welcoming our very first male guest. And I'm so excited that our first male guest is my personal role model and mentor, Michael Croaker. He has got so many amazing talents and I guess roles to his name. He's currently the head of entertainment for Village Roadshow theme parks. He is a professional actor, a professional voiceover artist. He is, oh my goodness, he's a writer, an MC, a presenter, a musician, you know what? You could name it, and he's probably done it or is currently going to give it a go because this guy is one of those people who just follows his dreams, completely lets go of any fear, and just gives it a go and somehow finds time in his day to do so. So he's just joining in now. Let's just connect him and we'll find out a bit more about his journey. And he's also going to give you some tips from his Stand and Deliver public speaking bootcamp so that we can all learn how to communicate more effectively. Hello, Mr. Croaker.
Hey, how you doing? Good to see you.
Good to see you too. You're in your man cave.
This is my office at
Oh,
work, which
you're
is
still at
kind
work.
of like a man cave.
It is kind of like a man cave. It is the
Yeah,
coolest office that anyone has ever seen. There's a jukebox in his office.
it's
Like,
tucked away on the other side here, so I won't try and put it into shot.
oh, thank you so much for joining us. It's been such a huge few weeks with SeaWorld reopening and now Movie World reopening. How's it all gone?
It's been great. It's been the new normal, so everyone's adjusting. So it's not
Yeah.
only us, of course,
Yeah.
but we're making our way through it, and it's just great to have people back in the park and doing what we love.
And there are so many changes. I mean, it's such a huge undertaking, especially for an industry like theme parks, to change things like ride operations and, entertainment and how people interact. I have so much admiration for everyone involved because given that we met at at a theme
At a
park,
theme park,
I
yeah.
know I can completely understand. So, for those of you watching who don't know us personally, and I know there are a couple of people, and I saw that Aaron's watching, who was another one of our colleagues from Wonderland. We met at Wonderland Sydney, which is still so dear to my heart. For those of you who remember it, years ago, it was a part of many of our childhoods, and Michael was the head of entertainment there, and I was the guest services manager. So that's how we met 20 years ago.
Yeah, time goes quick.
Time
But
does go really quickly.
we started talking about change, right? And so
Mm.
people, as a general rule, go kicking and screaming into change. It's not something we're good at as an animal.
No.
And what you have now is a collective global anxiety because change is forced on all of us at once at the same time. So it's a interesting test to see how we as a species manage ourselves through it. We'll either do what's happening in some quarters of the world, which is tear ourselves apart, or we'll get steady and become more focused. So there's the global consciousness has a challenge in front of it,
Yeah.
and we individually have our own challenges. So it's interesting times, but we'll see it through.
Yeah, it's one of everyone kind of keeps saying the whole, we're all in this together. And sometimes it feels like we are, and sometimes it feels like we're not.
As a general rule, it's nice to think we're all in it together, right? But as a
Yeah.
general rule in life, you're largely in it on your own here, even if you're surrounded with noise and company. So the real test is to make sure that you're in it here and you've got the inner fortitude to push through it here.
Yeah.
It's one thing to have the catchy phrases, but it's another thing to really be able to get steady here and push through and demonstrate that resilience.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
that's being forced on us now. So
Yeah.
We'll see how we go.
Well, hopefully it's going to be something that helps us to grow. I mean, for me personally, I am someone who hates change. I'm a sentimentalist. I like order. Not knowing what is ahead really is a huge challenge to me. I hate the unknown, and it's testing me every step of the way. But it's interesting what you discover out of that too.
Absolutely. We kind of get started on a
Yeah, we
sour
don't.
note.
We went straight into COVID-19. This
Why
is,
don't you take the lead and tell me where you want to kick off?
you know, this is really an insight into what our conversations are like all the time, though. So,
Mhm. That's going to
and
be the challenge in this conversation,
it
is to keep
is,
it on one lane rather
it
than multi-lanes, changing and looking at what's at the side of the road over there and thinking, let's pull in there for a little
is.
bit and have a
Yeah,
look over there. So why don't you
exactly.
grab the wheel? I'll stay in the
Okay,
passenger seat
I'm
and we'll
steering.
go forward.
Got
Yeah.
it. Well, let's turn back in time.
Mm.
And I can't wait, and I really do hope that one of the many passion projects that you take up is writing a memoir, because I will be the first person to purchase my autographed copy. And because seriously, you have done everything and anything, and your career has, without wanting to use the theme park pun, but it really has been a bit of a roller coaster. It's gone up and down and around, and you've tried so many different things. I know it's a long story, but could you take us through a little bit to how did you get here today, sitting with me right now?
I walked out of a hallway, which is just over here to my
You're
left,
such a
and I
smarter.
turned right into a room with a key that opened a door. Look, I'll try and give you a short, punchy version of that. But my high school years were in Townsville in North Queensland, and it wasn't a place where there was a lot of opportunity in the arts, which was the thing that I inherently felt drawn to. And as high school came to an end, I found myself really asking those big questions. Change was coming, right?
Mm.
You know, and I often say we have a series of deaths and births right through our entire lives before we have the final death. You know, and so there's the birth of your innocence, the death of your childhood, you know, the birth of your adult life. So there's this constant cycle of, you know, these periods of your life kind of burning and then passing, and you transition through. So confronting the end of high school was like, well, as it is for all of us, what do I do? And so the challenge for me was, you know, I wasn't a terrific student. I kind of sat in the middle and floated up and down on occasion. So the decision was made to jump on a bus, and with the blessing of mum and dad, and at the end of grade 12, caught a bus down to the Gold Coast. And through people that I knew, I was very fortunate to get the opportunity to have an interview at SeaWorld to be a rides attractions attendant. And my first gig there over the holiday period in 1988 was driving the train around the park. And I figured I would do that for maybe 6 months, save some money. And then the dream was to travel down to Sydney and audition for the National Institute of Dramatic Art, or
Oh,
NIDA.
neither.
And at the time, it was extremely difficult to get through. You know, I think it was only a couple of people from each state that would go into the drama course, for example. And if you were 18 years of age, it was highly unlikely you'd have the chops or the experience to be able to get through. So after an audition for NIDA, I was shortlisted down to the final four, and they were taking two out of Queensland. So I had an audition in Brisbane, is where it ended up, and I was unsuccessful. And I remember the guy that conducted the audition sat me down and said, well, Mr. Croaker, you've been unsuccessful this time, but let me give you some advice. And of course, all I was hearing was no.
Yeah.
You know, we started out in a room with like 80 or 90 people, and then we were whittled down over the second day to four. And then, you know, two were going through. And I was thinking, you know, this is it, it's coming. And he sat me down and he said, you just haven't had the experience. There's something in there, but we know that this 3-year course will crush you in 6 months because you just haven't lived yet. And as he's talking, I'm not listening, I'm just hearing. As I grew older, the words took root in my mind and made perfect sense. And I've since used them for
On
other
other
people
people.
and made it my own, you know. And he said this really lovely thing to me. that wasn't lovely at the time. And it was, I want you to go out into the world and I want you to stand and I want you to be hit. And he's talking in metaphors, right? But I want you to be hit and I want you to taste blood on your lips. I still remember that quote. I want you to taste blood on your lips. I want you to hit the ground and feel dirt on your face. Then I want you to stand back up and move again and get hit again. And then I want you to come back and audition for us. And then I think we'll see someone who's ready. And of course, that wasn't what I wanted to hear. And as I got older, I understood exactly what he was saying. Essentially, he was saying to me, you need to go and live. You need to go and taste failure and success. And you need to fall in love. And then you need to get your heart broken. And then you need to start again. And then you need to trust. And then you need to be let down. And then you need to inform script or character with all that experience. So it's not just dropping lines off a script. It's putting emotion and thought and feeling under dialogue and bringing it alive through you. And that is the craft. You know, it's not necessarily about just getting lines down. So that was a real sort of shake-up for me. And it kind of meant I'll stay at SeaWorld for a little longer. I'll do what I need to do. And I would hear these shows happening around me while I was in the park. And I thought, I'll do them maybe another 6 months or a year. Maybe I'll go back and audition again. But I would be in the park operating rides like the carousel or driving the train. And you'd be hearing these shows. And there'd be dolphin shows and seal shows and water ski shows. And you'd be hearing them popping up all around you. And it just caught my ear. And I thought, wow, I wonder if I can get away from this merry-go-round and maybe try that. And I just quite literally knocked on the door. And I guess what I was learning was, in the absence of opportunity, create opportunity. I wasn't consciously doing it, but I was unconsciously doing something that I was able to then understand is a thing. And that was to seek out opportunity and tap on the door. And so I tapped on the door. And at 18, short version of the story, I became the youngest live show announcer at SeaWorld, ultimately. And that was kind of the start. And it ended up being this kind of distraction away from the original goal and moved me over this way. And then suddenly, I was being able to interact with dolphins and dolphin trainers and really fascinating personalities. And within 3 or 4 years, I was writing. And I, at 26, wrote The Quest for the Golden Seal. And that became our very first fully themed seal show, which ran for about 10 years. And that was the beginning of kind of then the career moving into another level. So it's really been a roller coaster right from that time onward. But along the way, I was very fortunate for the business did then and continues to allow me to branch off and do other things. I got an agent. I did 12 months on Good Morning Australia opposite Bert Newton, which
Amazing.
was a real pinch me experience. And, it was unscripted. It was literally just, we roll camera and you two will riff and you will form a conversation that will start somewhere and finish somewhere. And it's got to do that within this amount of time. And you need to hit these marks somewhere, somehow in this informal conversation and move this product along. So it was kind of like live infomercials.
Were you Moira?
I did some things opposite her. So it was fascinating for me, So then little bits and pieces followed. I played a villain in a series called Pacific Drive for a little while.
Yes,
which
I remember that well.
Fortunately you can't find anywhere.
You can't YouTube it?
No, you won't find it. Long buried. But so I was able to kind of taste. I've often said I was given the opportunity to move around the smorgasbord of life rather than sit and have a 3-course meal that was predetermined and chosen off a menu. I kind of got the opportunity and created opportunities too to walk around the salad bar, and try that and then go away and come back and maybe try this. And then you turn around and, 30 years have gone by. Such is life.
Yeah. But do you look back and think, now that you have had a chance to sample so many different things and roles and really work on different talents, do you look back and think, oh, I really wanted to win an Oscar as an actor? Are there any sort of regrets in that, in that area? Because I just look at you and go, oh man, I want to live your life.
Yeah, that's very kind of you. There's no regrets and there's no room for regrets. I often say that and it's not, I'm not the first to say it, you only know what you know at the time that you know it.
Yeah.
And you make decisions on the knowledge you have in the moment to act out the way that you act out. Sometimes that's good for you, and sometimes it isn't. And sometimes you don't know that it's bad for you until you've acted it out and had a consequence, and then tasted blood on the lips and got up and dusted yourself down, and then realized maybe I need to make better choices. And so as I've gotten older, I've realized you've got to learn to cut yourself slack and understand that where you're at the time that you're at is relative. And that person will only make the calls they know to make at that time. Sometimes they're terrific calls and they're absolutely the best ones you could have made. And other times you probably could have put a bit more thought or empathy into your decision making. And at some point you have to reconcile with all of that and own the person in the mirror for all the good, the bad, the black, the white, and particularly the grey.
I think
there's no room for regret. I mean, you start carrying bags of regret around, and I often say, you know, you've either living your life with one foot in the past or one foot in the future, and that's most of us most of the time. Yeah. So we're either playing this loop of regret or pain or loss or bad choices, or that thing that we said 10 years ago that then set off a chain reaction of other things that maybe we should never have said, or whatever it was. But it's history now, right? It's your history. And it's reduced down to maybe photos, video, or a memory. But it doesn't exist now. It's only locked away on your hard drive. And if we're not doing that, then usually we've got a foot sitting in the future. Now, what am I doing tomorrow? How do I get through next week? What happens next month? And what if in the next 12 months this happens? And my God, if that happens, then I'm going to end up in this situation. So while you're doing all of that at any one moment, you're missing out on this.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, even as you and I are talking, I often talk about, and just get me back on track if I'm...
Yeah, no, it's great. You're leading me perfectly into my next question.
I often talk about the human mind is like a four-way freeway to me. And it's running 24 hours a day. So there's always some degree of traffic on the freeway. Doesn't matter what time of the day it is. Now, even as I'm talking with you and you're here looking at me, you know, virtually, I'm the immediate focus in front of you, in the front of your mind. But I fully well know that on that multi-lane freeway, there's a thought in your rear view mirror that's coming up fast on the overtake lane. There's someone cruising in the left lane that you kind of got a lazy eye on, and that might be that thing you know you should have done at 2 o'clock, but I'll get to it tomorrow. The speeding thought is that thing you've realized while we're talking, as soon as we're done, I've got to make sure I drop that email to. And then there's the thought that's 2 or 3 cars in front of me. I just happen to be the first car in front of you if we talk about, you know, vehicles being thoughts. One of the great things that happened in my life in my 30s, my late 30s, was the realization through reading the works of Dr. Wayne Dyer, I'm sure we'll touch on that as we get to the back end of things, was that you are not the thought. And we're kind of conditioned to identify ourselves with the thoughts that we're having that are usually connected to a feeling that we get. This is just largely noise in here, right? It's what this machine does. It's constantly running. It's really powerful when you understand that you are not the noise. The mind is generating the noise, but you sit in the space between the thoughts where stillness is, where there is nothing but presence. Now, a lot of people will tell you, well, that's almost impossible for me to access, and how do I go about doing that? And I can't possibly meditate, or whatever it might be, whatever you want to call it. But I really got to understand over time through daily habits that we exist in the space between thoughts. And the trick then is to slow the traffic down and be the traffic controller on the freeway of your mind. Slow them down, bring them down, find a space between 2 competing thoughts, sit in between them, expand them out, and just be here now. And to do that even on a daily basis at a micro level, until it becomes like a muscle memory, and you actually find that you'll condition the mind, you'll coach the mind, it'll respond to you bringing attention to that process. But if you bring no attention to that and you only identify with the noise, which usually eventually becomes a form of anxiety at some level, and you only see yourself as, I'm just this bag of bone, blood and an electrical current running through my mind that's constantly chatting. Well, what a sad way to be, right? We're so much more. We exist in the space between the thought. And the trick is to make a daily habit of getting into that space and having real moments of connectivity, not only with other people, but with you.
Yourself.
Can I sit comfortably in the dark and just breathe? Or do I have to have a light near me? Do I have to have the phone going? Do I have to have noise? Can I just do that, even for a little while before the noise starts up again?
Yeah.
So for me, making that a daily practice when life was tough certainly helped me get through that. And what it eventually did through other tough times that had come, and I'm sure for those that are down the road, it allows you the opportunity to access an unlimited well of energy, mental and emotional energy. You're able to tap into that and fill the tank back up. You can't do that if you're constantly connecting to the chatter in the mind because you believe I am the chatter.
Yeah, true.
And you're not. The chatter is just running on the freeway.
Yeah, very true. I think I wanted to pick up on something that you said earlier about giving ourselves slack for things that we've done in the past or things that we've said. And I just really wanted to kind of reiterate that to everyone, myself included. I need to be kinder to my past self. But especially now, I think that we need to give ourselves more slack than perhaps we are, because it's not doing us any good, you know.
Well, let me tell you, the one thing we all share is this: we're all perfectly imperfect.
Yeah.
All of us. And that unifies us more than anything else. We're perfectly imperfect. And I think the sooner we accept that in ourselves, it's that self-acceptance, accepting the things that aren't terrific, paying attention to them and working on them, catching ourselves when we're acting out on a certain way that we act out. We all have our little things, right, that we're aware that we do, but it's catching those little things within us, working on it.
Yeah.
Changing that's a great thing. You can always reprogram this. And if you're not uploading new programs into your hard drive and you're still running on something that you had when you were 18 and you're going into your 50s, for example, and emotionally, mentally, you're still carrying these programs from your late teens, something's wrong.
Yeah.
And that's no one's responsibility but yours.
Yeah.
So, you know, we are the solution. I often say people aren't complicated. They complicate. But I don't think the human
so true.
I don't think the human animal's a complicated animal at all. And you can find commonality in most people when your defenses are down. I'm sure many of us have had that experience just in travel, whatever it might be. You don't even need to have common language. When the guard is down and we're just in the process of connecting, there's a commonality between the animal that is the human. But we love complication because we're so serious about ourselves, you know, and I have to be this really complex creature and it's all about me and how I'm feeling and what I want, and no one seems to care, and can't they see that I'm this wonderful complex animal? And noise.
And ego.
Of course. I, me, mine.
Yeah.
We love to get it complicated. I've been just as guilty of it particularly as a younger man, and you have flashes of it because we're all perfectly imperfect, right? But if we can catch ourselves acting out on those impulses or those programs that are old programs that aren't serving us well, now we can catch that and start to re-hardwire. And that's the great thing I think we give up during the course of our lifetimes, that personal power to at any time choose to respond rather than react. So if there's a moment happening and I have an emotional rush to it and a thought and I act out on it, sometimes you do need to do that, right? You've got to act on an impulse or move your car very quickly away from that situation, whatever it might be. But we are afforded the gift as the human animal to be able to observe the thought, catch the feeling, choose a response. So I've just thought this. How much attention will I pay to that now? And will I say the thing that's come to me to say? Before I do that, is it better for me in microseconds? Is it better for me to hold that and just listen and not hear, but actively listen. Because most of us are passively hearing most of the time
Yeah.
and not actively listening.
Yeah. And we're going to
Because
get...
active listening, you've got to listen to me now.
I know, I've
Active
got to listen to it.
active listening takes genuine effort. And who wants to do that? You know what I mean? Because to actively listen means, in this moment with you now, I'm clear in my thoughts. I'm just spatial. I'm listening to you. And the effort I'm giving to you will allow thoughts and feelings in me to be changed and altered or challenged, because I'm having a direct, active experience with you listening.
Yeah.
And that's really powerful when two people are doing that. Sometimes they don't even know they're doing it. It's an unconscious kind of locking on. Usually that locking on is nothing more than the act of active listening, enriching the experience of the exchange. But when we can get aware of that and pull on that ability on a daily basis, it's very powerful. Because most of the time we're passively hearing. Why? Because it's just so busy on the freeway. And I've got to watch you, but I'm also watching that. And I'm also watching this. And yeah, I'm nodding my head, but I'm also nodding my head watching 3 steps down. It's much more difficult to say, what if I didn't have any competing thoughts or traffic and it was just you, or that moment with my child? And I catch myself when I'm not present with the kids. I can feel that, and then try and get myself back in, even subtly. So there's a lot to be said for much of that.
Yeah. Well, your son is watching now, it seems.
Oh, there
As
he
he's
is.
popped up. There you go. Hi, Harrison.
I hope he's listening.
I know. Yes, I hope you're actively listening, Harrison. There's 2 things I want to say. First up, do you think that it's easier to actively listen when it's more of an even exchange of energy with people? Because I know you and I have chatted about, there are just some people where you have a conversation with them and you can feel yourself drain through that entire experience. And there are some people, like every conversation that I have with you, where I just feel like I'm filling up. So it's easier to actively listen and connect.
I'm sorry, I wasn't listening.
Yeah, I know. I was waiting. I've been waiting for you to throw that out.
Well, you said it for me. It was so obvious. Can I respond to that? And I thank you for your words. What it is, what you just described there, is nothing more than one thing, because we're not complicated animals, but we love to complicate. What you just said essentially was, we're all energy, and some energy is complementary energy that counterbalances mine when I'm with you, whoever that is. And other energy is out of balance. So I'll bring my energy to a situation or a conversation or an interaction, but inevitably the energy I'm going to get off that other person, whoever it is, may not meet the frequency of my energy. That's when you feel that drain. Oh my God, just getting off that call. With those people are largely referred to as emotional vampires, right?
Yeah.
But they don't know they're emotional vampires most of the time. They don't know they're draining the energy out of you. And you have to catch yourself when you might be doing that too. I've got a great reputation for running some of my meetings, and I'm sure you can tell by the way I'm speaking out, where I know I'll see people do the physical language communicating to me of, I know I'm listening. And I pick up those cues, and that kind of tells me, okay, you may need to wrap this up. The energy exchange now is out of balance. I was talking to a good friend of mine the other day, and I said to him, whenever I get off the phone with you, I feel good. But I think you feel good too, right? And he said, no, I get the same feeling. I said, well, you know what that is? That's an equal exchange of energy between us. We both know when we talk that it's a fair and equitable exchange of emotional and mental energy. It's unspoken, but that's what it is.
Yeah.
Then when you can call something, it's easier to manage through it, right? It's when you don't know what something is that anxiety follows. So when you are feeling a little spent or a little, every time I talk to that person, what that usually is the inequity of the energy exchange between your frequency. When you know that, and that person comes back onto the scene because they just happen to be in the circle or they were part of the extended family, whatever it might be, you can then consciously make the decision here to gear in and know for the next X amount of minutes, I just need to be aware of this frequency exchange and not work myself up and just be present and not allow myself to be drained. So maybe I won't go deeper than the shallow end of the pool here.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not everybody wants to go swimming with you down the deep end every time. And sometimes it's just good to know certain people in my life are quite happy to, and sometimes that's a good thing for all of us. Let's just splash in the shallows for a little while, rather than draw all the energy out. And if someone's going for that, I often say, no one can take from you nothing you're not prepared to give.
Yeah.
In terms of emotional energy, mental energy, time. So when you start to whinge and moan and talk about this person makes me feel, no one makes me feel a certain way. Gandhi once said, and I'm not going to quote him with justice, but it was something like, nobody wipes their dirty feet through the hallways of my mind. Now, essentially what he's saying is, there's no one getting in here to make a mess. I'm just not going to let that happen unless I decide to let you in and occupy space and take up energy because of my love for you, whatever it might be. I'll let you in. But I'm not just keeping an open door here for squatters who aren't paying rent and offering a fair or equitable exchange of energy. And that doesn't mean you shouldn't be empathetic or you shouldn't be sympathetic. I'm not suggesting that for a moment. But it's making the decision to know consciously, I'm prepared to open up here a pool of energy and emotional resourcing because the situation calls on it. This person who I love calls on it.
Yeah.
And then also they're not equally picking, you know what? Here they come again. All right. I'm not opening up all the doors. That's not up to them. It's up to me.
Yeah.
How much I let go is up to me. They can't take anything from me that I'm not prepared to give.
Yeah.
And if I'm giving so much all the time to every person I interact with in every moment of the day, only to have nothing left when I get home at night and feel exhausted and spent, and then get back up and do it again the next day. How many times do you know those situations where someone comes home and says to their partner, let me tell you about my day. Oh, okay. Tell me, babe. Oh, my God. This person, this meeting, that call. Then they said, then they want. And the partner sits opposite and you go back in there tomorrow and you show, yeah, thank you. I feel good. We got that out. You go back and you do it again. Then you go back home the next day. Oh, my God, you're not going to believe. Oh, really? And there's this endless cycle. At some point, you have to catch yourself and say, in here, I choose today to not spend every drop of emotional and mental energy on everybody I encounter.
Yeah.
That's no one's responsibility but mine.
Yeah.
And if I want to complicate it and say it's all on them and they make me feel, and that's because of the things they say, well, that's you failing to do the work. Because doing the work takes a little bit of attention and daily habit of self-awareness, even in pockets.
Very wise words. And we've actually had a few people comment and say how wise your words are. And we've had Johnny Reardon has jumped on to say that best advice to receive in regards to public speaking and life experience skills is this man right here. Great stuff, Michael. Which leads into, I'm assuming maybe Johnny has done Stand and Deliver, because Michael is the facilitator and director for Stand and Deliver, which is a public speaking bootcamp. And if you haven't already learned so much stuff, this is a program where you have this one-on-one access with Michael, and I mean, I'm dying to be able to actually do it in person with you. But can you tell us a little bit about Stand and Deliver and what you teach and what people can expect from the boot camp?
Well, it's interesting. On the very first night I ran a session, I had a young lady come along, and when we finished, I was packing the gear down and she came up to me and she thanked me for the night and she said, can I say something to you? I said, sure. She goes, I came here tonight thinking it was going to be about public speaking, and I was waiting for a real negative comment. And then she went
I want
a
refund.
But she went on to say, I've realised it's really, tonight's about life. And I said, I'm so glad you said that. So my point being, I get the message across during my sessions that you shouldn't give up your birthright. But most of us surrender our primary birthright, and we do it gradually. It's like the old boiling the frog scenario, right? The frog sits in the water, you start to boil the water, but you don't boil it too quick for fear that the frog feels the temperature heat up and jumps out. So the boiling of the water happens very gradually. And in our lives, that boiling can happen over 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years. Just this slow surrendering of your birthright. Your birthright that I'm talking about is fearlessness. No one's born into the world racked with fear, filled with anxiety, crying with self-doubt. It's the opposite. The baby's crying, saying, I want. You better give me. I'm going to make a lot of noise if I don't get. The little kid is jumping off a roof thinking he can fly because he believes anything is possible, because the human experience is about being hardwired for fearlessness in order to perpetuate the species and go out and create and build and do whatever it is we need to do. We're hardwired for fearlessness. So I say to the people in my sessions, what we're going to do tonight is tap you back into the thing that's already in there, latent. Because everyone will tell me the same thing. I hate the sound of my voice. I'm just not confident talking to big groups. I'm not confident talking to small groups. It's not about the mic, is something that I say. And it's not about the public speaking. It's about the anxiety and the fear and the self-doubt loops that you have running in here. I'm not good enough. That thing that someone said to me when I've never really forgotten, that shook my confidence up and changed my whole world. It's their responsibility. Otherwise, I would have been okay. Again, we love to complicate. But your birthright is at your core fearlessness. So what I do for the first couple of hours of a session is we just do exercises that are built around mindfulness and getting out of your own way, getting you present, tying back into what we talked about earlier at the start with the 4-lane freeway. Once you're present, you are then open to this inner fire, which is something that I have called it over the years, your fearlessness. You can access it because you're not filtering its channel with all the clutter and all the noise. It's got a free pathway. Once I know you're in that zone, then we get into the public speaking. My goal is to get people to objectively hear themselves rather than subjectively hear themselves. So to objectively hear the voice and learn to love the voice, learn to be confident getting it out. Because I say to people, this is a gift you've been given from birth. You can articulate your thoughts, your feelings, your passions, create connections. It's your signature. Why do we pay no attention to it? And it's not about public speaking and getting to a mic and coming along because you know you've got an event next week. And then you get up on the mic and you're inauthentic and you're faking it to get through. It's about daily communication habits that the mic is just amplifying when that moment comes. Or you're only amplifying when you're in a boardroom meeting or you're running a group of some kind, whatever it might be. So for me, the program is built on getting people to tap into their birthright of fearlessness. Now, once we've got you there, and then you get to hear yourself like you've never heard yourself before, you can't unlearn what you've learned and you can't unhear what you've heard. And you can't unknow what you know. So the very next day, I challenge people then to start making daily habits of the things that I pass on to them. You'll even hear as we're talking now, because I've done my 10,000 hours of 13 years at SeaWorld as a live show announcer and all the bits and pieces around it. I don't have a lot of vocal interference generally. That's just come out of the discipline of awareness. You know, I would record my shows on audio cassette. And kids, if you don't know what they are, just Google. But I would play the tapes back as a young guy. And there was a lot of pressure on me as the younger guy in the team because I was referred to as the kid. You know, the oldest announcers to me were 30s and up. And I was getting all these notes and I would record the shows and I would write notes down before I'd go back the next day. And sometimes those notes would be slow down. And I'd work on just slowing down the next day. And then I'd play shows back and I'd hear you're umming and ahhing a lot. That's vocal interference. So once you can give a name to something, you can address that thing. There's no anxiety because I know what that thing is. Oh, I've got a lot of vocal interference. I've got a lot of noise that I'm articulating out, which breaks the rhythm and keeps me at a distance from the audience. So today I'll just focus on not having that vocal interference upset the rhythm of the delivery. So these little habits took on, and then over time, they just become who you are. And the microphone's only amplifying that. So the short story here is when people say, what is stand and deliver? What is it that you do? I say quite simply, I help people find their voice. It's really simple. I help people find their voice. How do I do that? By just getting them out of their own way. Not me delivering any kind of magic. It's me getting them aware and then putting them through some exercises where I'll say, can you hear how much better that sounds when you do less of that and more of this? And 99.9% of the time, I'll eventually get, yes, I can hear that. Great. Now, that doesn't mean when you walk out of here tonight, that sticks and you're radically transformed into this amazing speaker. But what it does mean is you've taken the first step into a journey now of awareness, which is the first thing to do, become aware. And now, on a daily basis, in just everyday communication, you can catch that thing that you do and coach yourself to work on that and bring attention to it. Then you'll start to hear how other people are going. You'll be able to hear. Now you know what vocal interference is. This person has certain tics that I can't stop hearing now because your awareness has opened up. Again, it's about giving people a new program to upload here to tap into an existing resource that's just been dormant because it's become filled with the noise of the world. I always say, I do keynote speaking for Rotary, which I've been doing for a decade now, and I talk to young kids. And I tell them, just be selective about what you take in and where you store it in the drive. Because the subconscious won't know something that's good for you or bad for you if you're just storing it away. So be very selective about what goes in because it's informing what comes out. And just be careful you're not filling up with noise. The very first time I publicly spoke, I was in grade 8. And as I said earlier, in Townsville, there wasn't a lot of opportunities for kids that were leaning toward the arts. And the closest I could get to any kind of artistic expression was joining the debating class. So I joined the debating class and we had our first inter-school debate with Kerwin State High School, and we were Pimlico State High School. There's some plugs, and for what it's worth. And the subject was for or against captive animals, which was an unusual subject in hindsight. So we, in a group of 4, prepared our argument. And the kids I was in this group with were the A grade students. And it was a big deal for me to have some time with these guys because I wasn't A grade. So to be in the company of these kids was a big deal for me. And I really wanted to impress them and I wanted to impress the debating teacher. And I got my palm cards ready because we could all have our palm cards there. And I still remember to this day, I tell this story during our stand and deliver sessions. I still remember my opening line. I remember thinking as a kid, my God, that's a great opening line. It establishes interest right away. And the opening line was, let's be blunt. Hear that from a kid in grade 8. But that was my opening line. And I'm in this little classroom, my turn, I get called up, I stand up, I've got my palm cards. I deliver my opening line, let's be blunt. And I look up and the place is filled with parents. And most of human communication is, as we all know, it's about 70% physical, right? It's what the body's doing, which is going to signal to us where that person's at or an audience is at. So I look up as I'm doing my piece and I've got the room locked on me. And I'm getting the nods of their head and parents are looking at each other and smiling. And I can feel that I'm in the zone. But then I look across the room for my parents. They would hate me telling this story. Even, God bless Dad, when Dad was around, they would scratch their heads going, that's not how it went down. It's exactly how it went down. We've all got those memories that are visceral and they're in full color. Some memories are a little faded because you haven't really put attention on them and they're kind of sitting over on the memory bank there. And then there are memories that are in full color, in high def, 4K.
It's like,
and
5D,
no
can still feel,
there is no
smell.
doubt about it. You know exactly what went down. This was that memory. I look up for my parents and I went from hero to zero in microseconds. I look out and there's my folks at the back of the room. In a sea of heads that are otherwise doing this, there's these 2 heads doing this.
Oh, no.
And I look at that. I look down at my palm cards, which I can now no longer see because it's just a blur. And I start to stammer. And I get dry mouth and look. Sorry, I look at my classmates and I can see the horror and the fear in their eyes, and I'm so out of control with it that I can't stop. I'm just a rambling wet mess. And I remember the teacher, the adjudicator, coming over and putting a hand on my shoulder saying, "Thank you so much, Mr. Croaker. We might get you to take a seat."
Oh no.
Sure. And the sweat's pouring out of me. God bless the teacher. She did the worst thing as we made our way back to the car in all my shame. And as I got in the back seat of the car, she came over and went through the window and said, "Michael, what a great job. Congratulations. You did such a good job in there." I thanked her through my tears and self-loathing. I only tell that story because the very idea that that same kid would go on to become the youngest live show announcer in the history of the premier theme park in the country is ridiculous. When I was 18 and Mum and Dad first came down from Townsville to watch me do a show, I remember being in front of about 2,500 people in a ski show. And it was a show called The Pirates of Paradise. So it was based on the Pirates.
I remember it well.
Bandanas
I
and swords.
do.
And there are photos and videos.
Such memories.
And I was looking through the audience. I could see a sea of heads largely. They're connecting. I looked for my parents. And God bless Dad. He had his eyes on me. I looked over and Mum's kind of like this.
No.
And in my mind, I went, no, not today. and I delivered. And all that was for them, they had both come from a military background.
Yeah.
So Dad used to say to me, he was Air Force, he had been a warrant officer. And so he would run bases. And I remember him saying to me, "When you leave high school, mate, you'll join the Air Force. And people will say, 'There goes Barry Croaker's son.'" And I remember, even as a young guy, going, "Okay, so I'll walk that path. And people will tell me that I'm your son. So maybe I'm just walking a path that's the path you walked rather than the path I want." And Mum was military as well. Mum was Air Force where they met. And they were both self-made and did a great job there. But for me, it became, and I often say this to young people when I'm spending time with them in a keynote speaking setup, life will throw to you many obstacles and walls, whichever path you choose to put yourself on. Obstacles are just inherent on the journey. So there's no getting around them. So you can make a decision. I'll walk the path that I know is in me at my core, underneath all the noise and all the chatter and all the doubt and all the self-loathing and all the anxiety. I know it's in there. So if I pay attention to that and tune into my passion and who I am at my core, when those inevitable barriers and walls come along, I will have the energy, the endurance, the persistence to push through because it's the path I chose. But if I'm on a path that wasn't quite the one I wanted, but it was the one that was kind of expected of me, the passion isn't there, the fire isn't burning, and then getting through those walls will be like walking through setting concrete because the desire to be on the other side just isn't there. The point being, we can't escape ourselves. There's no one else that's responsible for the well-being of here.
Yeah.
There's no one else that can do it for you than you. And there's no one else that can slow the traffic of the mind to tap into the very thing you know you should be doing, but you.
True. Now, I have to do a time check because Instagram's going to knock us off in 10 minutes.
Let's wrap this up and land the plane.
I know. I'm like, I've got all this stuff. We're not possible. Well, I just have to welcome you back another time. I do want to, there's so much I want to ask you, but something just quickly, you have so many different passion projects and a very high-powered, busy, full-time job. What advice can you give to people who use the excuse, "I don't have the time to follow a hobby or a dream or a passion"? How do you fit everything in? And what advice do you give to others who want to but don't know how to?
When you say you don't have the time, you're saying you don't have the desire.
Yeah.
Now, you can look at yourself and say that's not the case. That's the case. So you've got to stop that loop of cutting yourself these conditions that it's okay to not be doing it. Yeah. Everyone's got the same amount of hours in their day. Not everyone's got the same set of circumstances, When isolation started, I began, it was easy then because there was no work. I was stood down in March, but I've been back for 3 weeks, and if anything, I've increased the habit. I walk from 4:30 till 7:30, 7
In the
days a week.
morning.
Yeah. So by the time I get to 7:30, I'm at my 15,000 steps. I drop my daughter to school. I'm in the office by 8:30, 9 o'clock, doing the day. Then at the end of the night, another hour. So there'll be
Another
20 Ks
hour.
in the day. Yeah, so there'll be 20 Ks in the day. In that time, I'm working on stand and deliver as I'm moving. I'm taking care of the things that I'm passionate about. I've just gotten around to finishing a draft of a screenplay I've been working on for 2 years, and I'll tweak certain elements of that for a rewrite just in my notes on the phone as I'm moving. But by the time I get to 8 o'clock, 8:30, most of the noise has settled and is out, and there's room in the hard drive to take in the work, to take in the day. But I was, like many, always had a reason why I couldn't. What we need to get in the habit of is finding all the reasons why we should.
Yeah.
And change the loop. Even if it's just micro habits every day that slowly compound on each other over time, but it's changing the programming. You have the same amount of hours in the day that Churchill had, that Paul McCartney had.
I love thinking about that.
But it's exactly the case.
Yeah.
And none of those people will tell you they didn't have time. They will tell you what they did with their time. Upload a new program, change the inner dialogue loop, and serve the passion, serve the desire. Rather than spend all the time talking about all the reasons why you can't, have an inner conversation about all the reasons why you should.
Yeah. Like
because
Nike says, just do it.
Well, at some point in time, it's all done, right?
Yeah.
It's done. I know I'm in the third act of my time on the planet. That doesn't matter what I think about that. That's just what it is. It's the third act. So then the next question is, well, what are you doing? You bemoaning the fact that death is inevitable, or are you getting up, catching a sunrise on a daily basis and moving in a direction that takes you closer to your passion? That's only up to you. No one else has got that responsibility.
Yeah.
And if there was something said to you when you were 10, or someone wasn't watching you when you were putting on a show for them, okay, well, stand back up, wipe the blood off their lips, take a breath, move.
Wow. See, it all makes perfect sense. And I think it does come down to the fact that how much do you want it? Because if you really do want it, you will do it. And if it's something that you feel like you should be doing because you should have a side hustle, or you should have a hobby, or your parents or your husband or, whatever told you should be doing something, then that's not going to put you in the right frame of mind to actually do it.
There was a day, Nat, I'll make it very quick. I know we're
no, that's all right.
I was picking up my son, Harrison, years ago when he was just starting in football, and I was picking him up and from training. He jumped in the car, and I'd just come from work, and it had been a long day. It's like 7 o'clock at night, and he loved the game, but he had a rough time that night. And we got in the car, and he was much younger. He was in his first year of high school, and he was a bit upset, but he was kind of showing me the brave face, And I said, "How was the game? How was training?" It was okay. But I knew he was upset. We got talking, and he'd gotten a scholarship for his football, which was the pathway into his high school. And so he was telling these kids that he'd been playing with for a while, "Hey, I've got this scholarship. Isn't that great? It's because of the football." And what he was waiting for was affirmation.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. He doesn't know that he's waiting for that, but he's waiting for the quiet applause of the people I care about.
Yeah.
What he got was the opposite. Oh, that doesn't mean anything. They hand those things out to everybody and anyone. You don't have to be talented. Don't think it's anything special. And I'm listening to him in pain and hurting. I pulled over to the side of the road, and there's no handbook with parenting. You hope you're going to do the best you can. We got talking, and I said to him, the opinion of those kids is important to you, right? Yeah, it is. And the opinion of the coach is important as well, right? He's the coach. Yeah, it is. And when you get to school and you've got teachers, their opinion of you is pretty important, right? Yeah. He's looking at me. And I said, "I'm your dad. So my opinion of you has got to be pretty important as well." Yeah, it is. Yeah. Okay. Now, none of them, including mine, is more important than whose about you. And he looked at me, and I could see the wheels turning. And he said, with a question mark, me. I said to him, that's it. We love to complicate, right? That's it. So I said to him, there's nothing else to talk about, buddy. If you only remember one thing from me, just remember the time that Dad made you aware of this truth. The number one opinion anyone's ever going to have about me, for better or for worse, will be the opinion I have of me.
Mm.
You won't need to tell me what you think of me. I'm honest enough about it already. I know where I'm strong. I know where I'm compromised. I know where I need to grow. I know where I'm great. I'm exploring the terrain of everything I am.
Mm.
Your validation is nice, but it doesn't define me.
Mm.
Your negative opinion of me doesn't define me. The opinion I have of me will be the thing that defines me.
I love that.
We're probably close to the end.
Do you know, I'm like, that is such a perfect place to wrap up, even though I have so many more questions to ask you. We may need to do a part 2 in a few weeks, I think.
Let's leave that to subject to audience demand.
Yes.
You might find you get the opposite.
Oh, there you go. Look at all the hearts, Mikey. I think audience demand is there. Before we go, are you able to let people know how they can find out more about Stand and Deliver and how they can reach out to you if they do want to make contact?
I'm running Zoom sessions at the moment. I'll have dates at the website over the weekend, and you'll find me at standanddelivercoach.com.
Brilliant.
And all the detail you'll find is there. I will soon be running first-person sessions on the Gold Coast, and there'll be news on that at the website in the next week or so as well.
Great. And I'll link, we'll be putting this up on the Pink Hibiscus website with some answers to some questions Mikey answered a little while ago for me. And I'll link across to the website as well for you all. Mikey C, you are a legend. And what an honor to have you on Pink Hibiscus Live. I absolutely adore you. And I'm so grateful. And thank you to everyone who's watching as well and interacting too. Oh yes, Roseberry Honey, I will put his skincare regime because we didn't get to the beauty rapid fire. I'll put that on the website, I promise.
And before we sign off, and I'm sorry we didn't get to some of those core things that are
no,
unique
that's all right.
But I just want to very quickly tell the story to people that know you. I can remember the first time I properly spoke with you. I was in my office. It was an open floor plan at Wonderland. So we all had this common floor space. And I'm at one end of the office, and I can hear this voice on the other end of the office doing a guest services call. And it just caught my ear. There was a nice rhythm. There was a good tone. There was a warmth in there and authenticity. And I came over to find out who had that voice. And I remember telling you, and that was the opening conversation, that you have a really terrific tone, and the way you were talking with that guest, you should be doing more with that, whether it's even doing some on-hold announcements and voiceovers for the park, but there's a gift in there that you may not be consciously aware of. So it's been an honor for me to watch you go through your journey and to be here as a part of the thing that you've built in some small way. So I'm incredibly proud of you, and I thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Mikey. And I definitely think we need to do a part 2. I think so.
Anytime.
Thank you. It's recorded. Thank you so much.
Best.
Have a great night, everyone. Stay safe, and we'll speak to you soon. Bye.
See you soon.
Bye.